Looking at life through ruby-colored glasses, here's your look at the upcoming release of the QMX Q-Fig X-Men Cyclops. The Cyclops Q-Fig diorama features Scott Summers perched on the X-Men logo display base in a pitched battle with the Brotherhood of Mutants. Having just unleashed a powerful optic blast from his ruby quartz visor, the remnants of the beam still linger around the visor and hover above his head. The QMX Q-Fig diorama captures Cyclops' power with hand-painted details and an X-Men display base. Let's first figure out how tall Cyclops stands, and I'm going to take the tape measure to the highest point, which I believe to be right there. That's the point in which the exit remains of the Optic Blast emanate out from his visor, and I think that gives us a measurement looking at 4.3 inches in height. And that in centimeters works out to be 11 centimeters exactly. Now, this is an early sample copy for Cyclops here. A big thank you to the folks over at Quantum Mechanics who were nice enough to send this my way. Cyclops is actually not slated until Q2 2020. So if you are looking to pick up the Leader of the X-Men for yourself, you can head on over to Quantum Mechanics' website. I'll put the link down below in the video description. All you have to do is put in your email address on the wait list, and as soon as this guy gets released, they'll give you a ring-a-ling-a-ling. Maybe not necessarily on the phone. They're not going to call you up, but they'll get in touch with you and let you know via email when Cyclops finally gets released. Let's have a look at the actual figure itself, and it seems the best place, as we always seem to start, is the display stand. What a neat looking display base. Sort of has an elevated raised platform, which also serves as the X for X-Men. If you don't look at the X immediately and you look at just simply the stand, then it says men, and it looks probably a little bit jarring, but I do really like the look of having the raised X like this. I believe it shares also the same display stand as all the other X-Men figures that they've released so far, which again have all had that X-Men logo. I really like that it's consistent across the board. The base itself is all a primary black, more of a matte black coloring, and while this isn't necessarily primary yellow, it's a very nice warm yellow that they went with. Because of Cyclops' color and his costume being more the primary yellow, I'm glad that they went with a complementary yellow, but not the exact same yellow for the base itself. If we flip the base upside down, let's turn around so you guys can actually see it. Underneath, it says X-Men Q-Fig Cyclops, along with the website if you are looking to go on to the wait list at www.qmxonline.com. Perched atop of the display stand, of course, you have the heroic leader of the X-Men, Cyclops, having just fired off his optic blast toward one of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Perhaps the Blob or Toad. Ooh, I'd love to see Toad or Blob be represented here as a Q-Fig. But we're certainly talking X-Men, and as X-Men go, the folks over at QMX have decided to sculpt this design of Cyclops, inspired by the Jim Lee classic design of costume. I feel personally the go-to choice when it comes to X-Men costumes. The very thought that they never really brought those costumes back again in recent comics. I guess they're always trying to evolve the costume, but I personally think that the Jim Lee design is my all-time favorite, and it seems clearly that QMX agrees with that. The color scheme of the blue and the yellow is quite fitting for this design of costume, and I like as well that I did mention this earlier, but the coloring isn't the same yellow as the display base, so it does look separate from it. Yellow would be a very difficult color to paint, and keeping in mind that these are all hand-painted pieces, for the most part the yellow has done pretty good. It hasn't bled through, it hasn't bled over. There are a few little areas, like for example here on the side, a very tricky area to, I would imagine, get in there with a, of course, a little small paintbrush to paint in that edge section between the strap and the torso. As a result of it, there's a little bit of area where the yellow hasn't completely been finished. But for the most part, it's generally quite clean and pristine. You've got the X-Men logo featured on the top section of his shoulder strap, and then you've got the X logo in the same color scheme of the black and the red done on this front buckle there as well. He's got all the pockets, and you can see each one of the pockets also have the little silver fastener to it, as well as his leg strap. Okay, I get the fact that he does have buckles and, should say, pockets there on his belt. I could never really understand why X-Men characters, or really any characters in the day, had leg straps. I don't know what purpose that actually serves. Is it just simply just to keep his pants tighter? I don't really know. But that's done also very nicely with some little silver accents. Done on the boots, done on the straps, and done on the pockets section of his belt. Quite liking the portrait also that they sculpted on his face. It's a little on the paler complexion, but for the most part it's quite passable. Then of course you've got the little stream snake of Optic Blast remains that came out from his visor. There's one little area here where there's a bit of a pocket. I feel like maybe that visor should have fit further back. But it's been obviously glued in place. Maybe there is supposed to be a gap. I don't see one on this side, and that's the only reasoning why I pointed out here on this side. Of course, you've got the hand calling card here up at the top of the visor there, on the side of the visor. Of course, firing off that Optic Blast. The Optic Blast, by the nature of the type of plastic and the paint that they used, reminds me a bit like cherry taffy. If you've ever had cherry taffy, it's delicious, but it kind of reminds me a little bit like that, or a fruit roll-up. It slithers its way up, sort of just kind of like smoke at the very end of his Optic Blast. He's got the exposed hair sculpted quite nicely there along the top. You can see there's a little bit of section where the hair hangs its way over the top of his cowl. Would you still consider this a cowl, even though it doesn't go completely over top of his hair? I call it a cowl, but he has a little bit of hair that sticks off just the edge of the cowl. I like the touches that they did to that. And we spin it around once again. Let's have a look at his face. There's one section that's right here, around the outlining of his mouth, or specifically right around the outlining of his teeth. It's done in pink, sort of to mimic, I suppose, the lines of his lips. But then they ran a line in between the teeth, the divider between the top and the bottom. I personally think that that would have worked better in a black line versus a pink line, because it just looks a little on the jarring side. Not that it doesn't look like his mouth is bleeding, but having that in a pink line, I think, is a bit more jarring for me. I would have preferred that, I think, more so with a black line instead. The neat thing about these pieces also as well is that the sculpts are part of their inventory. Now that they've got these as a full mold, I can't see why they couldn't go back and retool this slightly to give us different costumes that Cyclops has had over the years. The one that stands out to me is the early X-Factor costume. I would love to see Cyclops presented in the white and the blue color scheme instead of the blue and the yellow. It's just, again, something that they could consider. After all, if they already got the mold in check and they've already finished tooling the mold, why not just give it a different color scheme? Maybe you could even change the X-Men to X-Factor, just as a possible idea for what you could do with this still moving forward. Now, I've collected Q-Figs over the years, whether it be through subscription boxes, where I was just lucky enough that they packed a Q-Fig inside of one of those, or if I was able to luck out and find them at my local comic book store. But usually the pickings were slim when it came to Q-Figs at my local store, at least. But this is my first X-Men Q-Fig. Liking what they've done here with Cyclops. They've already done a Wolverine, a Jean Grey, and a Storm, where hopefully we'll still get the full team. Say the likes of Gambit, Rogue, Beast, Nightcrawler, Colossus, to name a few. I like the fact that they're all consistent with one another in the sense that they all share the same style of base. If you are going to, after all, market this as a team of Q-Figs, it's good that you at least have all the stands look the same. And the X-Men, from what I've seen, all look the same. So I like that they hopefully will continue the trend with that. Speaking of continuing the trend, why stop at the X-Men? I mean, it sort of hints the fact that Brotherhood of Mutants. Let's see some villains start making some appearances. I want to see a Magneto. I want to see like a Blob, the Toad, even a Juggernaut. Could you imagine how cool a Juggernaut would look as a Q-Fig? But there's a lot of appeal for these small little pieces. They're small in size, sure, yeah, but they got a lot of wow factor to them. The X-Men Cyclops, for example, has a lot of wow factor because not only does he have that little trail of Optic Blast coming out from his visor, but he's perched on an elevated X stand. How cool is that? As I said, this one is not yet released. He's going to be slated to be released in Q2 2020. So if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, I would say the best advice is probably head on over to Quantum Mechanics website. I'll put the link down below, and you can get on the waiting list. So as soon as this guy gets released in Q2, you can be notified, and then you can pick yours up that way. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at Quantum Mechanics who were very nice to take the time and send this my way. Today we were having a look at the upcoming release. This was the Quantum Mechanics Q-Fig X-Men Leader Cyclops. What a neat looking Quantum Mechanics Q-Fig. If you guys want to go back and have a look at some of my other Quantum Mechanics reviews, there's a playlist specifically for Quantum Mechanics. If you're also new to this channel or a long-time viewer, maybe you never got around to it because you were too busy going to your local comic book stores, that's okay. Hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that bell notification and keep your peepers peeled because there's going to be a whole lot of videos coming your way in 2020. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.